Over 4,000 years ago, in the dusty plains of South Asia, one of the greatest civilizations on Earth began to vanish. They built cities with straight roads, advanced drainage systems, public baths, wells, granaries, and houses made from carefully planned bricks. They traded across distant lands, created mysterious seals, and lived in some of the most organized urban centers of the ancient world. But then, something changed. The cities were abandoned. The writing disappeared. The great urban system collapsed. And unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley people left behind no clear kings, no giant war monuments, no readable records explaining their final days. So the question remains: where did the people of the Indus Valley disappear? Did they die from drought? Were they destroyed by invaders? Did disease wipe them out? Or did they simply leave their cities and become part of something new? This is the mystery of the lost people of the Indus Valley. Long before many empires rose to power, the Indus Valley Civilization was already thriving. Around 2600 BCE, cities like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dhalavira, and Rakhigarhi became centers of trade, craftsmanship, and urban life. These were not primitive settlements. Their streets were carefully arranged. Their homes had bathing areas. Their cities had covered drainage channels. Their bricks followed standard measurements. Their merchants used weights and seals for trade. In many ways, their cities were cleaner and more organized than many settlements that came thousands of years later. And yet, this civilization feels strangely silent. We do not know the names of their rulers. We do not fully understand their religion. We cannot read their script. We do not know what they called themselves. They were one of the largest ancient civilizations in the world, but today they are remembered as a mystery. Not because they built too little, but because they left behind too few answers. When we think of ancient civilizations, we often imagine powerful kings, massive temples, armies, and royal tombs. Egypt had pharaohs. Mesopotamia had kings. China had dynasties. But the Indus Valley was different. Archaeologists have not found huge palaces that clearly belonged to rulers. They have not found massive statues of kings. They have not found clear evidence of large armies or constant warfare. Instead, they found something even more mysterious. A civilization built on order, planning, and standardization. From one city to another, the bricks, weights, seals, and layouts show a level of coordination that is difficult to explain. Someone, or some system, was organizing life across a vast region. But who? Was it a priestly class? A merchant network? A council system? A form of government we still do not understand? The Indus people may have created a society that was powerful without leaving behind obvious symbols of power. And that makes their disappearance even harder to understand. Because if we cannot clearly see how they ruled, we also cannot clearly see how they fell. For hundreds of years, the Indus Valley Civilization flourished. Then, after around 1900 BCE, many major cities began to decline. Large urban centers became less populated. Long-distance trade weakened. Standardized weights and seals became less common. The famous Indus script began to disappear. People started moving away from major cities into smaller villages and rural settlements. But this was not like a city being destroyed overnight. There is no single layer of ash across every city. No clear sign of one massive war. No written record saying, this is the end. Instead, the decline looks slow. Like a system losing strength over generations. The people did not simply vanish in one dramatic moment. Their world changed piece by piece. And the real mystery is not just why their cities collapsed. The deeper question is, what forced one of the most organized civilizations of the ancient world to abandon its urban way of life? One of the most powerful theories begins with water. Civilizations depend on rivers. Rivers feed crops. Rivers support trade. Rivers allow cities to grow. The Indus civilization depended on river systems, including the Indus and other ancient waterways. But over time, rivers can shift. Floods can destroy cities. Channels can dry up. Monsoon patterns can weaken. Some researchers believe environmental change played a major role in the decline. If rainfall decreased and rivers changed course, farming would become harder. Cities would become difficult to support. Trade routes would weaken. People would be forced to move. Imagine living in a city that once had reliable water. Your crops grew. Your wells were full. Your trade routes were alive. Then year after year, the rains become weaker. The river moves farther away. The soil becomes less productive. Food becomes uncertain. At first, people adapt. Then they move. Not because they want to abandon their city, but because the city can no longer support them. In this version of the story, the Indus people were not conquered. They were pressured by nature. The environment may not have attacked the Indus people in only one way. Some areas may have suffered from drought. Other areas may have experienced floods. Different cities may have faced different problems at different times. Mohenjo-daro, for example, shows signs of repeated flooding. Rebuilding again and again would have required enormous effort. A city can survive one flood. It can survive two. But if floods continue, if crops fail, if trade slows, if people lose confidence in the system, the city begins to weaken. The Indus civilization may have faced a slow combination of disasters. Not one catastrophe. Not one enemy. But pressure from many directions. Less predictable weather. Changing rivers. Declining agriculture. Weakening trade. Urban stress. And when a civilization depends on balance, even small changes can become deadly over time. The collapse may not have sounded like an explosion. It may have sounded like silence. A market slowly emptying. A street no longer repaired. A seal no longer used. A family leaving the city and never returning. For a long time, one popular theory claimed that the Indus Valley Civilization was destroyed by invading groups. This idea was once linked to the arrival of Indo-Aryan-speaking people in South Asia. But modern archaeology has made this theory much weaker. There is no strong evidence of a single violent invasion destroying all major Indus cities. The decline appears gradual and regional, not like a sudden military conquest. That does not mean there was no conflict at all. In any ancient world, migration, tension, and violence could happen. But the idea of one dramatic invasion wiping out the entire civilization is now seen as too simple. The Indus collapse was likely more complex. People moved. Cultures mixed. Languages changed. New communities emerged. The story was not just destruction. It was transformation. And that may be the most important clue of all. Here is the twist. The people of the Indus Valley may not have disappeared at all. Their cities declined, but the people themselves likely moved into new regions, especially towards smaller rural settlements. They may have spread eastward and southward. They may have mixed with other populations. Their traditions may have continued in changed forms. A civilization can disappear from archaeology without its people physically disappearing. When cities fall, people do not always die. They migrate. They adapt. They change their lifestyle. They become part of new cultures. The Indus Valley Civilization as an urban system ended. But the descendants of its people likely lived on. This means the lost people may not be lost because they vanished. They are lost because their identity changed so completely that history can no longer separate them clearly from the cultures that came after. Their cities became ruins. Their script became silent. Their names were forgotten. But their bloodlines, habits, crafts, and memories may have continued quietly through generations. One of the biggest reasons the Indus Valley remains mysterious is their writing. Thousands of symbols have been found on seals, pottery, tablets, and other objects. But the script has never been fully deciphered. That means we cannot read their laws. We cannot read their stories. We cannot read their prayers. We cannot read their warnings. Imagine trying to understand Egypt without hieroglyphs. Imagine trying to understand Mesopotamia without cuneiform. That is the challenge with the Indus Valley. Their writing is like a locked door. Behind it may be the names of their cities, their gods, their leaders, their trade records, and maybe even clues about their decline. But until the script is understood, the Indus people remain silent witnesses to their own history. They speak through bricks, drains, beads, seals, bones, and ruins. But not through words we can fully understand. And that silence makes their disappearance feel even more haunting. Even though their cities faded, the Indus people left behind a powerful legacy. They showed that urban planning existed in South Asia thousands of years ago. They created trade networks reaching distant regions. They mastered craft production, beadmaking, pottery, metallurgy, and city sanitation. They built a civilization based not on giant monuments, but on practical intelligence. Their greatness was not in pyramids. It was in wells, in drainage systems, in standardized bricks, in carefully planned streets, in the quiet discipline of daily life. Maybe that is why they are so fascinating. They were advanced, but not loud. Powerful, but not obsessed with giant statues. Organized, but not easy to decode. They remind us that history is not always written by kings and conquerors. Sometimes history is built by ordinary people who created extraordinary cities. And then, slowly, walked away. So where did the people of the Indus Valley disappear? The answer may be more mysterious than any legend. They did not vanish into thin air. They were not all wiped out in one battle. They did not leave behind one final message explaining everything. Instead, they seem to have transformed. As rivers changed and cities weakened, they moved. As trade declined, they adapted. As their urban world collapsed, they carried pieces of their culture into new communities. The Indus Valley Civilization disappeared as a civilization. But its people likely became part of the living history of South Asia. And maybe that is why the mystery feels so powerful. Because the Indus people are both gone and not gone. Their cities are ruins. Their writing is unreadable. Their leaders are unknown. Their stories are missing. But somewhere in the languages, cultures, crafts, traditions, and ancestry of later generations, echoes of them may still remain. The lost people of the Indus Valley did not leave us a final chapter. They left us a question. When a civilization falls, does it truly disappear? Or does it simply change its name, its home, and its memory? And until the Indus script is finally read, their greatest secret remains locked in silence. A silence older than history itself.